The galaxy was quiet. It had been quiet for 2,000 years. Doctor stood at the window of Sanctuary Station and looked out at the stars. She was tired. She had been working for 20 hours straight, trying to save a young who had been hurt in a mining accident. The boy would live, but it had been close. Was the head doctor of the biggest hospital in the galaxy. Sanctuary Station was huge. It was like a floating city, but instead of shops and homes, it had medical rooms and healing machines. 50,000 doctors, nurses, and helpers worked here. They came from many different planets, but most were human. Humans ran most of the hospitals in the galaxy now. It had not always been this way. Long ago, humans were fighters. They were good at war. Too good. They had almost destroyed their own planet with their wars. Cities burned. Millions died. The humans who survived looked at what they had done and felt sick. That was when everything changed. Humans decided to never fight again. They put away their weapons. They learned to heal instead of hurt. They studied medicine and peace. They became the best doctors in the galaxy. Now, when aliens got sick or hurt, they came to human hospitals. When there was a fight between different alien races, humans would come and help make peace. Everyone trusted humans because humans only wanted to help. Walked through the hospital halls. Everywhere she looked, she saw different kinds of aliens. There was a tall, green getting his broken arm fixed. 3 small pixie creatures were getting checkups after eating bad food. A huge Titan warrior was learning to walk again after losing his leg in battle. The hospital treated everyone the same. It did not matter if you were rich or poor. It did not matter if your people were friends or enemies with other races. If you were hurt, humans would help you. This was the law written in old treaties that every race had signed. Stopped at the children's ward. Through the glass, she could see young aliens from 20 different worlds playing together. They were all getting better from different sicknesses. A human nurse was reading them a story. Smiled. This was why she became a doctor. Her assistant doctor came running up to her. He looked worried. "We have a problem," said. "There's a ship coming, a big one." Frowned. "What kind of ship?" "Empire. It's the Emperor's own flagship." Smile disappeared. The Empire was powerful and mean. They were big reptile creatures who liked to fight. Their leader, Emperor, was the worst of all. He took planets by making their leaders fight his champion in single combat. His champion always won. "What do they want?" asked. "Their general is hurt, bad hurt. He was fighting a warrior for control of a planet. They used poison on his sword. The general is dying." Nodded. "Bring him in. Set up the emergency room." Looked surprised. "This is General. He's killed thousands of people. He's taken 17 worlds." "He's also dying," said. "We're doctors. We help everyone." The ship docked with the station. Soldiers carried General into the hospital. He was huge, even for an. His scales were gray and black. Green blood was flowing from wounds all over his body. The poison was eating him from inside. And her team worked fast. They put him on the strongest life support machine. They ran tests to find out what kind of poison it was. The results were bad. It was a rare poison that attacked the nervous system. If they did not stop it soon, the general would die. For 18 hours, and her team fought to save the general's life. They used human medicines that had never been tried on before. They built tiny robots that could go into his blood and fight the poison. Did not sleep. She did not eat. She just worked. Finally, the poison was gone. General would live, but he was still very weak. He would need at least a month to get strong again. Was washing her hands when Emperor arrived. She could hear his voice before she saw him. He was loud and angry. When she walked into the room, she saw him standing over his general's bed. The Emperor was even bigger than the general. His scales were bright red. His eyes were yellow and mean. "You will fix him now," the Emperor said too. "I need him ready to fight." "He's stable," said, "but he needs time to heal, at least a month." "No, he comes with me today." shook her head. I can't let you do that. Moving him now could kill him. The Emperor's eyes got angrier. You cannot tell me what to do, human. He is my general. This is a medical station, said. Everyone here is under my care until they are healthy. That includes your general. The Emperor stepped closer too. He was so big that she had to look up to see his face, but did not back down. You forget who you are talking to, the Emperor said. I rule 1,000 worlds. And I rule this hospital, said. Your general stays until he is healed. For a moment the Emperor just stared at her. Then he smiled. It was not a nice smile. We will see about that, he said. The Emperor left the hospital, thought that was the end of it. She was wrong. 2 hours later, felt the station shake. She looked out the window and saw the Emperor's ship moving closer. Blue light shot out from the ship and wrapped around the station. It was a tractor beam. Alarms started ringing. Ran to the command center. The station commander, a nervous named, was trying to talk to the Emperor's ship. What's happening? Asked. They're pulling us toward their ship, said. They say we're now part of the Empire. Could not believe what she was hearing. They can't do that. This is a hospital. It's neutral territory. They found some old law, said. Something about salvage rights. They say because we wouldn't give them their general, we're now their property. Watched as soldiers flew across space and landed on the station. Soon, they were inside. They pointed their weapons at the hospital staff and patients. They had taken over. Had spent her whole life healing people. She had never hurt anyone. But as she watched alien soldiers march through her hospital, pointing guns at sick children and old people, she felt something new. She felt angry, very angry. She remembered stories her grandmother told her about the old days when humans were fighters. For the first time in her life, wished humans still knew how to fight. She was about to find out that they did. Watched the soldiers march through her hospital. They wore black armor and carried big energy weapons. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but could see their yellow eyes glowing in the dark. The soldiers moved fast. They took control of every floor, every room, every hallway. They put guards at all the doors. No one could leave. No one could enter. In less than an hour, they had turned the biggest hospital in the galaxy into a prison. Doctor ran up too. His face was white with fear. They're everywhere, he said. They have soldiers in the children's ward. They're pointing guns at sick kids. Felt her hands shake with anger. Where's Commander? They arrested him. All the security guards too. We're on our own. Looked around the main hall. Everywhere she could see scared faces. Patients who had come here to get well were now trapped. Families who had brought their loved ones for healing were now prisoners. Some of the patients were very sick. If they didn't get their medicine on time, they would die. A tall officer walked up too. His armor was fancier than the other soldiers. He had gold markings on his helmet. You are doctor? He asked. Yes. I am Colonel. I am now in charge of this station. You will do as I say. Stared at him. This is a medical station. You can't just take it over. We already have, Colonel said. This station is now property of the Empire. Everyone on it is our prisoner. There are 200,000 people here, said. Most of them are sick. They need treatment. Then you better treat them, the Colonel said. Because if any of them die, we will blame you. Couldn't believe what she was hearing. They were holding the hospital hostage, but they wanted her to keep working like nothing had happened. You can't do this, said. There are laws, treaties. Every race in the galaxy signed agreements that hospitals are neutral places. Colonel laughed. Laws change. The Emperor found an old rule about salvage rights. When you refused to give us our general, you broke your contract. Now you belong to us. Knew he was lying. No law could make this right, but they had the guns. She walked through the hospital to check on her patients. What she saw made her sick. Soldiers stood next to children's beds. They watched while human doctors tried to work. Some of the younger doctors were crying. In the intensive care unit found her worst fear. Mrs., an old human woman, was having trouble breathing. Her machine had been damaged when the soldiers came in. She needed a new one, but the soldiers wouldn't let anyone into the storage room to get it. "Please," said to the guard, "she'll die without this machine." The soldier just stared at her. He didn't care. Had to watch Mrs. struggle to breathe. She felt helpless. For the first time in her life, she understood why her ancestors had been fighters. Some things were worth fighting for. News of the hospital's capture spread fast through the galaxy. On the planet Prime, President called an emergency meeting. "This is impossible," he said to his advisors. "No one attacks hospitals. It's been illegal for 3,000 years. His military advisor general shook his head. They found a loophole. Technically, they're following the law. What law lets you take over a hospital? Ancient Salvage writes. They're saying the hospital broke its contract by not releasing the general, so now it's abandoned property that they can claim." President slammed his hand on the table. "That's crazy. We have to do something." "Like what? Start a war? They have the biggest military in the galaxy, and technically they're not breaking any laws." Back on Sanctuary Station was trying to keep her hospital running, but it was getting harder every hour. The soldiers were getting meaner. They were taking food from the cafeteria. They were bothering the nurses. Some of the patients were getting scared and trying to leave, but the guards wouldn't let them. Was in her office when her communication screen turned on. Emperor's face appeared. His red scales looked shiny under the lights. "Doctor," he said, "I hope you're taking good care of my general." "He's healing," said through her teeth. "But this has to stop. You're putting innocent people in danger." The Emperor smiled his mean smile. "They are only in danger if you don't do your job. Heal my general quickly and everyone can go home." "It takes time. You can't rush medicine." "You have 1 month," the Emperor said. "If my general is not ready to fight in 1 month, things will get much worse for your hospital." The screen went black, sat in her chair and tried not to cry. She had trained her whole life to save people. Now her own hospital was being used to hurt them. She walked to the window and looked out at space. Somewhere out there were human worlds. Somewhere out there were human leaders who could help. But humans had been peaceful for so long, wasn't sure they remembered how to fight. She thought about calling Earth, but what could she say? "Help us, but don't hurt anyone." They had guns pointed at children. Sometimes thought being peaceful wasn't enough. As if reading her thoughts, her communication screen turned on again. This time it was her supervisor from Earth, Director Sarah Martinez. "We heard what happened. Are you okay?" Looked around her office. She could see soldiers through the glass. "No, we're not okay. They've turned our hospital into a prison. We're working on a diplomatic solution. The Earth government is talking to the Empire. We'll get you out of this." "Sarah, they have guns pointed at sick children. Diplomacy isn't going to work." Director Martinez looked sad. "You know we can't fight. Humans don't fight anymore. We've been peaceful for 2,000 years." "Maybe that was a mistake," said quietly. "What?" Took a deep breath. "Maybe learning to heal made us forget that sometimes you have to fight to protect the innocent." That night couldn't sleep. She walked through the hospital halls. The lights were dimmed. Most of the patients were sleeping, but the guards were still there, always watching, always threatening. She stopped at the children's ward. Through the glass she could see 20 young aliens from different worlds. They were all sick, but they were getting better. At least, they had been getting better before the soldiers came. A little girl named Pip had been scheduled for surgery tomorrow, but now wasn't sure she could do it. They might decide the operating room was too dangerous to allow. Felt something break inside her heart. These children trusted her to make them well. Their families trusted her. The whole galaxy trusted humans to keep hospitals safe, and she was failing them all. She walked to her private communication room and sent a message to Earth. But this time, she didn't call her medical supervisor. She called someone else, someone whose name she had heard in old stories. The message would take 6 hours to reach Earth. Didn't know if anyone would answer. She didn't even know if the person she was trying to reach was still alive. But she had to try, because someone had to fight for the children. Someone had to fight for the sick and the scared. And if the peaceful humans of today couldn't do it, maybe it was time to wake up the humans of yesterday. The humans who remembered how to fight. Admiral Sarah was feeding her chickens when the message came. She was retired now, living on a small farm on Earth. She was 90 years old, but she still looked strong. Her hair was gray, but her eyes were sharp. She had been the last military commander before humans became peaceful. For 60 years, she had been trying to forget about war. Her house computer made a soft sound. "Admiral, you have an urgent message from Sanctuary Station." Sarah dropped the chicken feed. Sanctuary Station was the biggest hospital in the galaxy. Nothing urgent ever came from hospitals unless someone was dying. She walked inside and activated her communication screen. Doctor's face appeared. The doctor looked tired and scared. Admiral said, "I don't know if you remember me. I work at Sanctuary Station." Sarah nodded. "I know who you are, Doctor. You saved my grandson when he got sick with fever. What's wrong?" Took a deep breath. "They took our hospital, Admiral. They took it. They have guns pointed at patients, at children." Sarah felt something cold move through her chest. "Explain." Told her everything. About General, about Emperor, about the soldiers in the children's ward. When she finished, Sarah was quiet for a long time. Admiral said, "Are you still there?" Sarah looked at her hands. These hands had once planned battles that saved worlds. Now they fed chickens and grew vegetables. For 60 years, she had been happy with that trade. But some things were more important than peace. "Doctor," Sarah said slowly, "do you know why humans stopped fighting?" "Because we were too good at it. We almost destroyed ourselves." "No," Sarah said. "We stopped fighting because we learned what was worth fighting for. For 60 years, nothing has been worth it. Today, that changed." Sarah stood up. Her back hurt, but she ignored it. "Doctor, I need you to stay strong. Take care of your patients. Keep them safe. Help is coming." "What kind of help?" Sarah smiled, and for a moment could see the warrior the Admiral had once been. The kind that Emperor has never seen before. After his message ended, Sarah made a call she thought she would never make. She called the Human Colonial Council on Mars. The president of the council was David, a peaceful man who had spent his life building schools and hospitals. When Sarah's face appeared on his screen, he looked confused. "Admiral, I thought you were retired." "I was," Sarah said. "Not anymore. David, they took Sanctuary Station." "I know. We're working on a diplomatic solution." "There is no diplomatic solution to evil, David. Sometimes you have to fight it." President looked uncomfortable. "Sarah, we don't fight anymore. We're peaceful people now. We're peaceful people who are about to remember what we're capable of when someone threatens our children." Sarah sent President all of his information. She sent him videos from the hospital showing soldiers pointing guns at sick aliens. She sent him medical reports showing that patients were getting sicker because they were too scared to ask for help. "David," Sarah said, "look at this and tell me diplomacy is going to work." President watched the videos. Sarah saw his face change. She saw the exact moment when a peaceful man remembered that sometimes peace had to be protected by force. "What do you need?" he asked. "A vote, council emergency session, and access to the archives." The archives. No one had opened the human military archives in 60 years. They contained all the knowledge humans had gathered about war. Battle plans, weapon designs, military strategies. All of it locked away when humans chose peace. 12 hours later, the Human Colonial Council met in emergency session. All 50 human colonies sent representatives. Sarah stood at the center of the Great Hall on Mars. She looked at the faces around her. These were good people, peaceful people, people who built schools and hospitals and farms. But they were still human. Representatives, Sarah said, for 2,000 years we have chosen peace. We have been healers and builders and teachers. We have been proud of what we became. Murmurs of agreement filled the hall. But today, Sarah continued, someone took our people. Someone pointed guns at our doctors. Someone turned our place of healing into a place of fear, and they think we will do nothing because we are peaceful. Sarah's voice got stronger. They are wrong. We are not peaceful because we are weak. We are peaceful because we are strong enough to choose, and today we choose to protect the innocent. Representative Maria Santos from the Alpha Colony stood up. Admiral, what are you asking us to vote on? War, Sarah said simply. I'm asking for permission to remember what we were before we became what we are. The hall was silent. These people had lived their whole lives without war. Their children had never seen violence. They had never held weapons. Representative James Park from the Tau system spoke next. Admiral, our military was disbanded 60 years ago. We don't have weapons. We don't have warships. We don't have soldiers. Sarah smiled. We have something better. We have factories that can build anything. We have scientists who can create miracles. We have engineers who can build ships that cross galaxies. And we have 2,000 years of peace that has made us very, very good at working together. She activated a holographic display. It showed the blueprints of ships and weapons from the archives. But these weren't the old designs. These were new ones, created by combining old military knowledge with new peaceful technology. We can build a fleet in 30 days, Sarah said. We can train crews in 20. We can be at Sanctuary Station in 10 days after that, but only if you vote yes. Representative Santos looked worried. Admiral, if we do this, we become a military power again. What happens to our peace after the war is over? We choose peace again, Sarah said, but this time we choose it with the knowledge that we can protect it. The vote was close. 26 colonies voted yes, 24 voted no, but yes was enough. Within hours, the transformation began. Shipyards that built hospital ships started building warships. Factories that made medical equipment started making weapons. Scientists who studied healing started studying ways to end fights quickly. Dr. Torres had spent her life developing medicines that could heal any injury. Now she was working on weapons that could stop enemy ships without killing their crews. Her nanorobots, designed to repair damaged tissue, could now shut down computer systems and engines. Engineer Robert Jackson had built the fastest ships in the galaxy for medical emergencies. Now, he was designing warships that could move faster than anything they had ever seen. All across human space, people were remembering skills their grandparents had tried to forget, but they were not becoming the violent humans of the past. They were becoming something new, peaceful humans who could fight when they had to. Sarah stood in the war room on Mars, looking at the screens showing construction around human colonies. Ships were being built, weapons were being made, crews were being trained. But the most important work was happening in the archives. Human military experts were studying every battle they had ever fought. They were learning how ships worked, how tactics worked, how to beat them. Admiral's assistant, a young man named Lieutenant Torres, brought her a report. Admiral, the shipyards report they can have a fleet ready in 25 days, faster than we hoped. Sarah nodded. Good, what about crew training? The simulators are running 24 hours a day. Most of our people have never fought before, but they're learning fast. They're motivated. Sarah looked at the screens showing Sanctuary Station, and her doctors were still there, still trapped, still trying to take care of patients while soldiers pointed guns at them. Not fast enough, Sarah said. Send a message to Emperor. What should it say? Sarah thought for a moment. The message had to be perfect. It had to show strength without making the Emperor angry enough to hurt the hostages. Send this, she said. Emperor, you have taken our people. You have threatened the innocent. You have 72 hours to release Sanctuary Station and everyone on it. If you do not, you will learn why humans chose peace instead of having it forced upon them. Lieutenant Torres looked worried. Admiral, what if he doesn't take us seriously? We're known as peaceful people. Sarah looked at him with eyes that had seen too much war and too much peace. Then he's about to learn something new about peaceful people. He's about to learn what we're capable of when someone threatens our children. The message was sent. Now came the waiting. Sarah knew the Emperor would probably laugh at the threat. He had never fought humans before. He had no idea what was coming. But Sarah remembered. She remembered what humans were like when they had something worth fighting for, and for the first time in 60 years they did. Emperor read the human message and laughed. He was sitting in his throne room on his flagship, the Destroyer of Worlds. The ship was huge, bigger than most space stations. It had enough weapons to destroy planets. Around it flew a fleet of 1,000 other warships. 72 hours, the Emperor said to his advisors. The humans want me to be scared of them in 72 hours. General, his military commander, nodded. My lord, humans have been peaceful for 2,000 years. They have no military, no weapons, no warships. What do they have? Hospitals, schools, farms. They are soft, weak people now. The Emperor stood up from his throne. He was 9 feet tall and covered in red scales. His claws were as long as knives. Send a message back to them. Tell them I will release the hospital when my general is healed and not before. And tell them that if they try to threaten me again, I will destroy their precious hospital with everyone on it. But privately, Emperor was curious. What could peaceful humans do in 72 hours? He decided to wait and see. He would regret that decision. 72 hours later, human ships came out of hyperspace near Sanctuary Station. The fleet was ready for them. General had positioned his ships in a perfect defensive formation around the hospital. He had studied human ship designs from the old archives. Human ships used to be fast but lightly armored, easy to destroy. The ships that appeared were nothing like what he expected. Admiral Sarah stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Asclepius. The ship looked like a medical vessel from the outside, white and smooth and peaceful. Inside, it was the most advanced warship ever built. Admiral, her tactical officer said, we count 1,050 enemy ships. They're in standard defensive formation around the station. Sarah nodded. Any word from Doctor? She sent a coded message hidden in a medical report. All hostages are alive. Enemy soldiers are positioned throughout the station, but they're not expecting an attack. Sarah looked at She could see Sanctuary Station in the distance, surrounded by warships. Somewhere in that hospital, and her team were still trying to save lives while soldiers pointed guns at them. All ships, Sarah said into her communicator. This is Admiral. Remember, we're not here to destroy. We're here to heal. We're going to cut out the infection and save the patient. Begin Operation Sanctuary. The human fleet moved forward. They did not charge like the expected. They moved like surgeons, precise and careful. Each ship knew exactly where to go and what to do. General watched them approach and frowned. These ships were moving wrong. They were too organized, too coordinated. It looked like a medical procedure, not a battle formation. All ships, he commanded, open fire. The fleet fired everything they had. Energy beams and missiles filled space with deadly light. But when the weapons hit the human ships, something strange happened. The ships didn't explode. They didn't even slow down. What is this? General shouted. Report. Sir, our weapons are hitting them, but they're not taking damage. Their shields are absorbing everything. The human shields were not normal shields. They were based on medical technology that protected patients from harmful radiation during treatment. Dr. Tors had modified them to protect against weapons. The energy from guns was being absorbed and converted into power for the human ships. Admiral smiled. "Their turn," she said. The human ships fired back, but they didn't use normal weapons. They used medical nanorobots shot from special cannons. The tiny robots flew through space and attached themselves to the ships. On the flagship, General watched his instrument panels start to flicker. "Sir, we're losing power," his engineer reported. "Something is wrong with our engines." "What do you mean?" "The engines are shutting down, but not damaged shutting down. They're being healed." The nanorobots were designed to heal damaged tissue by stopping harmful processes. Now they were healing the ships by stopping their weapons, engines, and life support. It was like putting the ships to sleep. One by one, ships began to drift powerlessly through space. Their crews were not hurt, but their ships could not fight. "Impossible," General whispered. "How are they doing this?" Admiral's voice came through his communicator. "General, this is Admiral of the Human Colonial Forces. Your ships have been neutralized. Surrender now and no one else has to get hurt." "Never," shouted back. "Lord does not surrender." "Then you force us to be more direct." Suddenly, human ships appeared all around the flagship. They had moved faster than thought possible. One moment the space around the destroyer of worlds was empty. The next moment it was full of human ships. "How did they?" started to say. "Sir, they were using some kind of cloaking technology," his sensor operator reported. "But it's not cloaking, it's more like they were hiding in plain sight." The humans had used another medical technique. Just like doctors could make tumors invisible to the body's immune system so they could treat them, human engineers had made their ships invisible to sensors. Emperor stormed onto the bridge of his flagship. "What is happening? Why are my ships floating like dead fish?" Before General could answer, the human ships fired again. This time, they used different nanorobots. These ones didn't shut down the ship's systems. They cut through the hull like surgical knives, making perfect holes that led directly to important areas. "Sir, they're boarding us," a security officer reported. "But how do they know exactly where to cut through?" The humans had studied ship designs the same way doctors studied anatomy. They knew exactly where to cut to reach important areas without damaging anything vital. Human soldiers poured through the holes, but they didn't fight like normal soldiers. They moved like medical teams responding to an emergency. They were fast, organized, and precise. Admiral led the boarding party herself. She was 90 years old, but she moved like a woman half her age. Behind her came human soldiers wearing white armor that looked like medical suits. The soldiers tried to fight them, but the humans were using weapons based on medical equipment. Stun rays that put enemies to sleep like anesthesia. Foam that wrapped around enemies like medical bandages, holding them still but not hurting them. In 15 minutes, the human soldiers had taken control of the entire flagship. Emperor found himself surrounded in his own throne room. "Impossible," he said. "My soldiers are the best in the galaxy." Admiral walked up to him. She was small compared to the huge emperor, but she showed no fear. "Your soldiers are used to fighting other soldiers," she said. "They're not used to fighting doctors who are trying to save lives. You cannot treat war like medicine." "We just did," Admiral said. "Every move we made was designed to end this fight as quickly as possible with the least amount of harm, just like emergency surgery." The Emperor looked around his throne room. His soldiers were unconscious but unharmed. His ship was captured but not damaged. His fleet was disabled but not destroyed. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now you come with us to Sanctuary Station," Admiral said. "You're going to personally apologize to every doctor and patient you threatened, and you're going to free everyone." And if I refuse? Admiral pointed to the. Through it, the Emperor could see more human ships arriving, hundreds of them. They surrounded the entire fleet. Then we'll have to be less gentle, she said. Emperor looked at Admiral's face. He saw something there that made him afraid. These humans had beaten his entire fleet without killing a single person. What would they do if they stopped being careful? I surrender, he said quietly. The battle was over in 6 hours. It was the fastest victory in galactic history. The human fleet had disabled 1,000 enemy ships, captured an entire army, and taken the most powerful emperor in the galaxy prisoner. And they had done it all without killing anyone. Admiral stood on the bridge of her ship and looked at Sanctuary Station. Soon, and her patients would be free. Soon, the hospital would be safe again. But first, she had a promise to keep. Emperor was going to apologize to every person he had threatened. Starting with the children. Doctor was checking on her patients when the lights came back on. For 3 days, the hospital had been dark and cold. The soldiers had limited power to save energy for their own equipment. Patients had been shivering in their beds. Children had been crying in the dark. But now the lights were bright again. The heat was working, and could hear something she hadn't heard in days, the sound of medical machines running normally. She ran to the window and looked out into space. What she saw made her cry with relief. Human ships surrounded Sanctuary Station. Clean, white ships that looked like floating hospitals, and the ships that had held them prisoner were just floating there, dark and still. His communication screen turned on. Admiral's face appeared and she was smiling. Doctor, this is Admiral. The station is secure. You and your patients are safe. Wipe tears from her eyes. Admiral, how did you? We'll talk later, Admiral said. Right now, I need you to prepare for some special visitors. Emperor has something to say to you and your staff. 10 minutes later, human soldiers in white armor came through the hospital. But instead of pointing guns at people, they were carrying medical supplies and food. They moved through the halls like nurses, helping patients and families who had been scared for so long. Met Admiral at the main entrance. The Admiral was shorter than had imagined, but she had the kind of presence that made everyone around her stand. Admiral said, I can't thank you enough. Don't thank me yet, Admiral said. We have some business to finish. Behind the Admiral walked Emperor. The huge reptilian ruler was in chains, but could see the fear in his yellow eyes. Next to him was Colonel, the officer who had threatened 3 days ago. He looked small and defeated. Admiral led them to the children's ward. Through the glass, they could see young patients from 20 different worlds. Some were sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. Others were playing with toys that human soldiers had brought them. Emperor, Admiral said, look at them. Stared through the glass. They are just alien children. No, Admiral said. They are patients. They came here because they were sick. Their families brought them here because they trusted us to make them well, and you put soldiers with guns in their room. For the first time, Emperor looked uncomfortable. It was necessary. I needed my general back. Nothing makes it necessary to threaten children, said. Nothing. Admiral opened the door to the children's ward. Emperor, you're going to go in there and apologize to every child you scared, every family you worried, every nurse you threatened. I will not. You will, Admiral said quietly, because the alternative is much worse for you. Emperor looked at the Admiral's face and saw something that made him change his mind. He walked into the children's ward. The first child he came to was Pip, the little girl who had been waiting for surgery. She was awake, playing with a small toy spaceship. Child, the Emperor said awkwardly, I apologize for frightening you. Pip looked up at him with big, curious eyes. Are you the mean man who brought the soldiers? Looked around the room. He could see human nurses watching him, parents holding their children closer, Doctors' assistants who had worked for days to keep everyone calm while soldiers pointed guns at them. For the first time in his long life, Emperor felt ashamed. "Yes," he said quietly, "I am the mean man, and I am sorry." He went to every bed. He apologized to every child. He apologized to every family. Some of the parents were angry, some wouldn't even look at him, but he apologized anyway. When he finished with the children, Admiral took him through the rest of the hospital. He apologized to the elderly patients in the long-term care wing. He apologized to the accident victims in the emergency room. He apologized to the surgical patients who had been afraid their operations would be canceled. Last, he apologized to the doctors and nurses who had kept working while his soldiers watched them. Doctor's assistant looked at the Emperor with angry eyes. "Do you know what you did to us? We take an oath to heal people, but for 3 days we couldn't do our jobs because we were afraid your soldiers would hurt our patients if we made a mistake." Emperor had no answer for that. The next day, representatives from every major civilization in the galaxy came to Sanctuary Station. They came to witness something that had never happened before, the trial of someone who had attacked a hospital. President of the Federation stood up first. "Emperor, you violated the most sacred law in the galaxy. Hospitals are neutral ground. They belong to no government and serve all people equally." The ambassador spoke next. "You took hostages, innocent people who had done nothing but try to heal the sick." One by one, representatives from dozens of worlds spoke. They told the Emperor what he had done wrong. They explained why hospitals were sacred. They described the fear and anger his actions had caused throughout the galaxy. But it was Admiral who spoke last. "Emperor," she said, "you made a mistake. You thought humans were weak because we chose peace. You thought we wouldn't fight because we had been peaceful for so long." The Emperor looked at her with tired eyes. His empire was collapsing. His generals had been captured. His ships had been disabled by people who turned war into medicine. "But you were wrong," Admiral continued. "We're not peaceful because we're weak. We're peaceful because we're strong enough to choose. And when someone threatens the innocent under our protection, when someone turns places of healing into places of fear, they don't face weak humans." She stepped closer to him. "They face everything humanity learned from 2,000 years of choosing to be better than our worst instincts, focused into a single purpose: stopping evil." The trial ended with Emperor being stripped of his title and power. His empire was broken up, with every world he had conquered getting the chance to be free. His former subjects, who had been afraid of him for so long, saw him defeated by people they had thought were harmless doctors. General, who had been healing in the hospital during the whole crisis, was horrified when he learned what his emperor had done. He publicly renounced his loyalty and asked to become a patient advocate, helping to protect hospitals from future attacks. But the most important change happened in galactic law. The Galactic Council met and passed the Sanctuary Principle. Any attack on medical personnel or facilities would now be considered an attack on humanity itself. And as the galaxy had just learned, attacking humanity was not a good idea. Doctor stood in her office and looked out at space. Human ships were still patrolling around the hospital, making sure everyone felt safe. Soon they would leave, and the galaxy would return to peace. But knew something had changed. For 2,000 years, peace had existed because everyone agreed to it. Now peace existed because humanity was willing to protect it. Admiral came to visit her before the human fleet left. "Doctor," she said, "I have to ask you something. Why did you call me? You could have called Earth's government. You could have called the Human Medical Authority. Why call an old soldier?" Thought for a moment. "Because sometimes, Admiral, peace isn't enough. Sometimes you need someone who remembers that some things are worth fighting for." Admiral smiled. "And what are those things?" Looked through her office window. She could see the children's ward, where young patients from many worlds were playing together. She could see the emergency room, where doctors from different species worked side by side to save lives. She could see families visiting loved ones, grateful that their nightmare was over. Children sleeping safely in their beds, said. Doctors being allowed to heal without fear. The idea that when someone is hurt and scared, there are people who will help them no matter what. Admiral nodded. Those are good things to fight for. Admiral, will humans stay peaceful now, or will we become warriors again? Admiral looked out at the human ships preparing to leave. Doctor, we were always warriors, warriors for peace, warriors for healing, warriors for the idea that innocent people should be protected. She turned back to, today we just reminded the galaxy what kind of warriors we really are. The human fleet left Sanctuary Station the next day. They returned to their worlds, their farms, their hospitals, and their schools. The weapons were put away. The warships were converted back to exploration vessels and medical ships. But everyone in the galaxy knew something new about humans now. They knew that humanity's peace was a choice, not a weakness. They knew that threatening the innocent would wake sleeping giants. And they knew that sometimes the best guardians of peace are those who remember the true cost of war. Doctor went back to saving lives. Admiral went back to her farm and her chickens. Emperor spent his days in prison, thinking about scared children and the humans who had moved through his ship like antibodies through a bloodstream. And in hospitals throughout the galaxy, patients slept peacefully, knowing that someone was watching over them. Someone who had chosen to heal instead of hurt, but who would always be ready to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. The galaxy was at peace again. But now it was a protected peace.